What if the moon was closer? What if the moon was slightly closer to us here on Earth? What if it were just 3,000 miles away instead of the current 3,474 miles? It's not that far, but because of the way gravity works, entire forests might get submerged underwater for hours each day, only to be revealed again when the tide goes out. Waves could crash over coastal towns and villages, carrying debris and salt water deep inland. This means that if the moon were to come any closer, say within 3,000 miles, we would likely see a lot more coastal communities getting hit by floods and storm surges every year. Every year, they cause billions of dollars worth of damage to coastal properties and infrastructure around the world. It's actually one of the main forces that make our planet a bit wider at the equator. This might not sound like a big deal, but it actually has some serious implications. As they fly to the east, the Earth's rotation gives them a boost that helps them stay aloft. But with a wider Earth, the ground beneath their wings would be moving faster, which would make it harder for them to stay in the air. This could lead to more accidents and delays. For one thing, it would affect the way that satellites orbit the Earth. Birds, for example, use the Earth's magnetic field to help them migrate. Maybe in a few million years, the moon will get a little closer and will have to deal with the consequences. If the Earth's gravitational field were to change, it could mess up their navigation and lead to more collisions with buildings and other obstacles. It could also mess with the migration patterns of insects like butterflies and bees, which could have a devastating impact on our food supply. Satellites are typically launched into orbit around the equator because the Earth's rotation gives them a boost that helps them stay up there. The moon's gravity has a stabilizing effect on the Earth, keeping our planet nice and steady. But if the moon were to come closer, this could throw off the balance and lead to more earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. The additional gravitational pull could cause the tectonic plates that make up the Earth's crust to shift and move, releasing energy that has been building up for years. This could lead to some major earthquakes and volcanic eruptions that would cause widespread damage and loss of life. But with a wider Earth, the ground beneath these satellites would be moving faster, which would make it harder for them to stay in orbit. After all, the moon is always changing distance from the Earth due to its elliptical orbit. It's actually never the same distance away twice. So we've probably already experienced some of these effects. And let's face it, the moon has been coming closer to the Earth for millions of years and we're still here. This could mess up everything from GPS navigation to communications to weather forecasting. The moon is only about 3% closer to the Earth at its closest point than it is at its farthest point. And that's not close enough to cause any significant changes. The moon is currently about 3,474 miles away, but it won't come any closer than 3,400 miles, which is still more than 3,000 miles. The moon's gravity pulls on the Earth, which makes it bulge out a bit in the middle. This effect is called gravitational stretching, and it's why if you were to measure the circumference of the Earth, you'd find that it's a bit bigger around the middle than at the poles. And that's with the moon at its current distance. So just imagine what would happen if the moon were to come any closer. It would be like turning up the volume on an already loud song. The changes wouldn't just affect the coastal areas, they would ripple across the entire planet. And it's not just the coastal communities that would suffer. The agricultural lands in these areas would also be at risk. The increased flooding would cause soil erosion and salination, making it difficult to grow crops and raise livestock. This could lead to food shortages and higher prices for consumers. Plus, the flooding would also damage roads, bridges, and other infrastructure, making it hard to move around and transport goods. And giant tidal pools could form on the seabed, teeming with all kinds of sea life. Some people might find these changes exciting and even breathtaking. Just imagine taking a walk on the beach and suddenly the ocean recedes, revealing a vast expanse of wet sand and rocks to explore. You could find all kinds of treasures, like smooth, colorful pebbles, sea glass, and maybe even some sea creatures that got left behind by the receding tide. Or you could go kayaking in the morning and paddle out to see the sunrise over the water, only to find yourself surrounded by towering waves when the tide starts coming back in. These experiences would be both humbling and awe-inspiring. This seemingly small change in distance would have some pretty significant effects. That's because the higher tides would also cause some serious problems. With a closer moon, coastal flooding would become much more common. Entire communities could be wiped out in a single day, causing billions of dollars worth of damage and displacing countless people. And let's not forget about the storm surges that often accompany tropical storms and hurricanes. With a closer moon, these surges could be even more devastating, causing catastrophic damage along the coast. The most noticeable difference would be the increase in the height of the tides. Now, when we say increase, we don't mean like an extra foot or two. We're talking about tides that could be hundreds of feet higher than they are now, which would lead to some incredible natural spectacles. Let's take a look at the Bay of Fundy in Nova Scotia, Canada, which already has the highest tides in the world. Its average high tide is around 28 feet. But with a closer moon, the tides there could reach over 1,000 feet. In some places, but while some people might enjoy these dramatic changes, others might not be so happy about them. In fact, a study published in the journal Nature Climate Change in 2019 found that even just a 1% decrease in the moon's distance from Earth could lead to a 50% increase in coastal flooding in some areas. We've already seen how powerful the tides can be. And the reason for this is because the moon's gravity doesn't just affect the oceans, it affects everything on Earth. If the moon were to come closer, the gravitational stretching would increase, which would make the Earth bulge out even more. It would also affect the way that planes fly. Airplanes rely on the Earth's rotation to keep them in the sky. And let's not forget about the animals. Many species rely on the Earth's gravitational field to help them navigate. But perhaps the most alarming consequence of a closer moon would be the increase in earthquakes and volcanic activity. Some people might argue that these changes wouldn't be that bad. But here's the thing, those changes are just too small to make a real difference. So rest assured, your coastal town isn't going to be wiped out by giant tsunami waves anytime soon. But who knows what the future might hold? Now watch what happens when the sun explodes, or check out why do planets have rings.